Hello, my astrology friends. This is Lada from AstroladaOfficial, and today, backed by popular demand, I am here with the evolutionary astrologer Mila, who will talk to us about a retrograde planet from the point of view of evolutionary astrology. Hello, Mila.
Hi, Lada. It's nice to be back. Thank you for inviting me for another chat.
People really love your knowledge, and I'm very excited that you're going to share for us how does evolutionary astrology look at retrograde planets. Currently, we have Venus retrograde, Mercury is going retrograde, Saturn is retrograde. What does it mean to be born with a retrograde planet?
But in evolutionary astrology, retrograde planet is looked at as an accelerated path of evolution because retrograde planet usually is behaving in an individuated way. So any planet that's retrograde in people's chart, it's on a path of individuation. It doesn't want to act in a way that is consensus agreeable, like traditional. So that's why they said that when people have planet in retrogrades, more planet in retrogrades, especially if they are the outer planets, because they are the regeneration of planets from Saturn onwards, then these people are to impact the human collective consciousness because they are on the accelerated path of evolution.
Wow, I love the perspective. So basically, they're rule breakers and they're
Yes.
quirky and they have unusual views and break patterns. Oh wow, this is great to hear because people
Exactly.
get so scared. Like I have five retrograde planets in my birth chart, but
I
they're
have
like,
four.
oh, okay. And they're like, what does it mean? Am I retrograde? Will my life be worse? And because traditional astrology says that the circumstances in your life that those planets rule will be more difficult. Have you noticed that as well?
Well, that's why I really like evolutionary astrology because it's not polarizing. Because in evolutionary astrology, everything is good. You know, everything is good because it's exactly as it has to be for the soul's evolution. Because, of course, you know, if people believe this, I do, we choose with our free will, you know, the circumstances we are born into, the family, the people, the culture, everything, because it's what the soul needs to you know, like get on the next level of evolutionary ladder, if you can say it this way. And I just think it's fascinating we're talking about this literally 1 hour before the full moon in Aquarius. Like literally the full moon in Aquarius is coming
Oh.
up like in about an hour and a half from now. So I think this is so profound because my teacher always used to say, my evolutionary astrology teacher always used to say, don't confuse evolutionary planet with Uranus, because it doesn't mean just because, sorry, not evolutionary planet, retrograde planet with Uranus, because it doesn't mean just because every planet is in retrograde is got a Uranian flavor. But what we really like put on the, you know, spin on the retrograde planet is this individuation process, which is very Uranian character, you know, characteristic. And that's why I think it's very profound that we chose this day, that you picked these days for this conversation, because it's full moon in Aquarius, which goes so well with the retrograde planets. Because if there were no people with retrograde planets, then we wouldn't, you know, nothing would ever change, because these are literally the people that want to act in a way that is not conformative.
Beautiful. I always love to give one example of the person who has the most retrograde planets. Nostradamus has all his planets, starting Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, those five visible planets. Probably Neptune, Pluto, and he had them all retrograde when he was born. And that implies also a lot of introspection with retrograde planets. So I've seen that sometimes people with many retrograde planets can have psychic abilities. Not for everyone, but ones that are more introspective. They can go within, inside the inner world somehow. And he could look through into other worlds and dimensions. And he was a great seer, Nostradamus. So this is the
Yeah.
best example always when someone says, oh, so many retrograde planets. Well, maybe you're not Nostradamus, but you have this like you said, you're in the process of accelerated evolution of the soul. And for more advanced people, this can lead to special psychic abilities, deep introspections and realizations as well. But yeah,
Yeah,
if you have examples, you can show us.
well, I mean, I have only the chart for tonight ready, and I mean, I have my own because I have four individual, four planets in retrograde. But it's a little bit tricky with, because, you know, when it comes to evolutionary astrology, people are a little bit more private. Like they don't want their stuff on the internet. But I just really wanted to mention that, well, Nostradamus also had Pluto in the ninth house, which also makes much sense. But it is really true that when people have the planets in retrograde, they are more introspective. And I mean, you are Aquarius rising as well, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same for you. Like, we really need a lot of time, people with a lot of retrograde planets, like, to themselves, because they need to really reflect, because they don't usually see what they feel inside reflected in the outer world, because we are like the deal break, like the ones that want to break out of the outdated patterns. So we need to really go within, because we don't usually find the mirroring on the outer world, because that's the world we are trying to upgrade, in a sense.
Wow, so beautifully said. Like, gave me totally different perspective of retrograde planets.
That's
Can
why I
you
really love evolutionary astrology.
Can you say a little bit about each of the planets retrograde?
Yes, that's what I wanted to go with, because, well, currently we have 5 planets in retrograde. It all started with Pluto being retrograde, and Saturn joined, now Neptune joined, and now, you know, only about a week ago, on Saturday, Sunday, week ago, we had Venus joining, and then right after Chiron, which was on July 23rd. And I remember, because that was the first day that Pluto exactly squared the nodes. We had the 3 exact squares last week, which was the 23rd, 25th, and 28th of July. And just before Chiron went retrograde, just after Venus gone retrograde, and just before Chiron went retrograde, there was the first exact square between Pluto and the nodes. So I think it's very profound how everything is actually layering up on each other and happening at the same time. So with the personal planets, so that's Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, obviously Saturn as well, but Saturn is kind of the transitionary one, because it's the last visible planet. So that's why I called Saturn the greatest manifester, because he's got the ability to turn the formless into form and form into formless, which is what he's doing exactly right now in being retrograde in the sign of Pisces, which is the sign of culmination. But if we start from the beginning, so Venus retrograde, people with Venus retrograde, usually they value things that are outside of norm. So because Venus is the planet, obviously, of relationship, as we know, but also Venus is all about our needs, our values, our sense of self-worth, our sense of what is important, what matters to us. And of course, then it's depending which house is it, which sign is it, because the house is the karma, the sign is how the planet acts. And currently, Venus being retrograde in the sign of Leo, this has multiple layers, because of course, Venus is the current ruler of the South Node. So South Node is what we are trying to resolve, because the square to the nodes, as it's happening this entire year from Pluto, as we talked in our past video about the skip step, Pluto is pointing towards South Node, because it's the node the planet made the conjunction with last, and because the nodes are going opposite direction to the planet, in this case it's always the planets to the left. And when it comes to current weather, astrological weather, the resolution to the square to the nodes for the entire year is South Node, ruled by Venus, and Venus is retrograde in Leo. So how I try to explain this to people is that when Venus was the ruler of the North Node, we were very focused, because the North Node was in Taurus until July 17th of this year, and Venus was really helping us to focus on ourselves, who we are. But then we had the new moon in Cancer, which happened just before the nodal shift, and now suddenly Venus is the ruler of the South Node, and now Venus is retrograde. So this is very important, because Venus being retrograde in Leo, she's helping us to understand our new sense of purpose and destiny, how we want to self-actualize under this new nodal shift. Because now North Node is in the Aries, so Venus is no longer associated with North Node. It's saying, okay, we need to resolve something of the past in order to move into the future. So Venus retrograde always is focused on trying to individuate her needs and values. But now Venus is retrograde in Leo, and Leo is all about creative self-actualization, about shining your light into the world. So this is kind of like multi-layered definition, but just generally, if people have Venus retrograde in their chart, they are on individuated path when it comes to their unique needs and values that they have in their life.
Beautiful.
So then Mercury is currently direct, but it's going to turn retrograde on August 23rd, and it will be retrograde until September 15th. And when Mercury is retrograde, this for a lot of people could have been tricky when they were growing up, because people might have thought that they had learning disabilities and stuff, because Mercury retrograde, what it practically represents in people's life is that the soul literally only perceives information that's relevant to the soul's evolutionary path. So if the soul doesn't perceive the information that's streaming around, which is a lot of stuff we are being programmed at school, a lot of stuff is not relevant. So the soul say, not relevant to me. I don't hear it. I don't see it. So that's why our system would class these kids as, something not quite right, whatever, whereas actually the soul is accelerated its path of evolution. So that's why it's focusing only on information that is relevant to its evolutionary path. So Mercury retrograde people, they usually are super intelligent, but they are not necessarily interested in the things that the society wants us to be interested in.
Oh,
so Mercury is going to go retrograde in Virgo, and Mercury at the moment is the ruler of North Node, because Mars, the ruler of the North Node, is residing in the sign of Virgo. So, and it's very interesting that during the nodal shift, Mars was in Virgo, and Virgo is all about learning and adjusting. And Mercury in Virgo is in its exaltation. Traditionally, in traditional astrology, is in rulership and exaltation. So Mercury being in retrograde in Virgo is really helping us to discern what information is relevant to us on this new pathway that we are currently walking on towards this new North Node in Aries. This is this new cycle of human evolution.
Wonderful.
And then with the Jupiter, most of the time people with Jupiter retrograde, they cannot confirm to one belief system or something, because Jupiter retrograde wants the soul wants to individuate their belief system, their perception of reality, because in evolutionary astrology, Jupiter is what we in traditional astrology call ascendant, the lens through which we perceive reality. Because in evolutionary astrology, the ascendant is the first house, which means that there is a lack of previous experience because it's Aries. So it's like, well, we have a level of insecurity, whereas Jupiter and Sagittarius archetype, because Jupiter, Sagittarius and 9th house is all considered as one archetype. So they represent the lens through which we see reality. And the best way to understand this, how I try to explain it to people when I do reading with them, is when you go for the eye test, they give you these very ugly frames, where they're trying to test your vision. And then they put all these lenses. And, if they put pink one, if they put green one, if they put sharper one, or, one that makes life foggy, that is Sagittarius archetype, the lens through which we perceive reality. So when Jupiter is retrograde in people's chart, they are trying to individuate the lens. They don't want to just use any lens anybody is using, but they're really seeking their own truth. Like, what is the truth for me? So normally people with Jupiter retrograde in their chart will not be able to just conform to one belief system, or just if somebody tried to push their opinion onto them or their truth, they will go like, well, I need to figure it out for myself.
Exactly.
There is something within me that is stopping me from, like just following this, whatever people want me to follow. And then is Saturn retrograde. Saturn is obviously in evolutionary astrology is the planet of our authority, is the planet definition of reality, is the manifester. I always say that Sagittarius comes before Capricorn, because whatever you believe, you create. Because, also whatever you believe, you find the proof of. So your Sagittarius, the lens through which you perceive reality, influences Capricorn, because then you create it, because you are the master manifester. We all have manifesting skills. Just some people are not aware of that, but we all manifest our reality. So when Saturn is in retrograde in people's chart, it's in an accelerated path of evolution when it comes to you becoming your own authority. So I have Saturn retrograde. So usually children with Saturn retrograde cannot conform to, the parents say, do this. And the kids say, no, I'm not doing that. You are not my boss. So it's kind of like, that's why I have a very good understanding of my nephews who are Pluto Capricorn generation, because I know exactly what it feels like when they try to tell you what to do and you go, no, this is not me. I'm my own authority. I know what I'm doing here, even if you are in a baby's body. So usually people with Saturn in retrograde in their chart they want to become their own authority, and they are very sensitive when people try to condition them and tell them what to do and what not to do, because there is this natural instinctual desire to reject the authority, because them on a soul level want to grow to become their own authority and define their reality and set boundaries. And sometimes people with Saturn, retrograde, they struggle because, it's very difficult to be able to put down the boundaries with the society is telling you, no, you have to do this. So it's, it take a certain level of maturity, like Saturn, especially until at least first Saturn return, when we actually feel we are able to, put the boundaries down. And then we have Uranus. So Uranus is already the planet of individuation and growth and rebelliousness. So when Uranus is retrograde, it's like a double whammy, because it's like there's this accelerated path of evolution. And I mean, I have Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. I have all of them retrograde. And when planet is retrograde, as after Saturn, we always look to the next planet. So as of Saturn, if Saturn is retrograde, you look to Uranus. If Uranus is retrograde, you look to Neptune for resolution. If Neptune is retrograde, you look to Pluto. But if all four are retrograde, then, well, you are just on an accelerated path, and you always look to Pluto anyway, because it's the sole desire for incarnation. But Uranus retrograde, these people, these are the rebels. These are the rebels because they cannot conform. They literally, they came here to, not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but they really came here to find the way how they can stay true to themselves, because they cannot be conditioned. It's very, very hard for them to be conditioned.
Yeah, I have a lot of planets retrograde too, so it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm sure everyone listening is nodding like, oh yeah.
Yeah, especially with the Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. With the Neptune retrograde, because Neptune is our meaning of life, it's like the last sign of the zodiac, where is the totality of understanding of the cycle of everything that came before. And when Neptune is in retrograde, these people just have to find what has meaning for them. So again, if these people go to someone else to tell them, hey, what is the meaning of my life? What is the purpose of my life? What should I be doing? Nobody can tell you what is the truth for you. And that, I mean, that is valid for everyone. But with Neptune retrograde, there is this continuous process of finding it and losing it. It's again an accelerated path. So we find something and we feel, oh my God, this is the meaning of my life. I want to hold to this forever. And then it loses a meaning. So like people, like when it goes to this, generational planet, it feels like you live multiple lifetimes in one life. So with the Uranus, you feel like continuously need to break free out of this mold. Everything, like things are like new, and then they become out, like internet now. It's not new thing anymore. It's like more Mercury than Aquarius, more Gemini than Aquarius. So it's like that, you like with the Uranus retrograde, it's like this continuous process of like feeling that, oh, this is outdated now. I need to find the next thing. This is outdated. I need to, I need to keep growing and evolving. With Neptune, it's like, okay, this holds a meaning for me. This is the path of my life. And then, whatever, how many years later you go, it has no meaning anymore. It lost the meaning. I need to find something different. And then with Pluto retrograde, this literally, especially if Pluto is next to the North Node, this is like you feel that you continuously jumping through the loops, like, okay, next karma to evolve through, next thing
next
to,
crisis,
to evolve.
next crisis.
And exactly, and it's just never ending. It's just never ending, because literally the soul is on an accelerated path to face everything that made it feel disempowered. And there is all these desires of the soul, like, oh, I want to be a chef, I want to be an actor, I want to do this, I want to do that, because there are all these external stimuli that the soul wants to experience in order to evolve. So that's why, especially Pluto retrogrades people, they feel like, I feel I lived multiple lifetime in one lifetimes. Wow. So yeah, so with the retrograde planets,
when you say accelerated path to grow, it's like, it sounds beautiful, but I know that in order for you to accelerate, you need to really be uncomfortable.
Yes.
Those retrograde planets make us feel very uncomfortable. They're not the
well, I mean, you can share your experience, I can share mine, but I can definitely attest to that, because usually people with a lot of retrograde planets, they feel very lonely. They feel very misunderstood. They feel really like aliens, literally like, I don't belong here. Like, people don't understand me. People with Mercury retrograde, they might feel people don't understand me. It's like they speak different language to me. And then with all these outer planets, it's like probably how Nostradamus felt. I was born in the wrong age. People are like, where am I? So it is kind of, I feel now that Pluto will be moving into the sign of Aquarius for 20 years. Everything will accelerate anyway. So that's why people with a lot of, Aquarius flavor feel like, oh my God, finally, finally change is coming, because it's like, we just couldn't kind of fit into this world the way it was anymore. But and I mean, I can only speak for myself. I don't want to like try to project anything on anyone. Disclaimer: this is just my personal opinions. I'm not saying this is the universal truth. But normally, people with a lot of retrograde planets, they feel quite lonely, because they feel that people don't get them, because they're like not.
Or they embrace their quirkiness and they're like, screw you, I've seen people that really like themselves with retrograde planets. They have accepted that they're not going to be accepted by everyone, and they live their more unusual, more unique lifestyle. But usually it comes later in life. At the beginning,
Yes.
you always feel like from very little, I had problems. They used to call me uh, they used to tell me that I'm the nun and the whore, and they told me you have to define yourself. I'm like, no. And now also people say, how can you be an astrologer but you believe in Jesus? Well, well, my belief systems is very unique to me. I did not, I choose and pick what to believe in.
Exactly. I have the same. I mean, I don't have retrograde Jupiter, but my Jupiter is in Aquarius in the first house. But also, what I wanted to say about that is that usually this happens after people go through the Uranus opposition, because after that they go. Then, and that's why, especially for women, they say that woman in her 40s is the happiest woman because she no longer cares what the society is saying. And I mean, after 50s, when people have the second Saturn return, that's it. They're like most of the people after they reach the second Saturn. I'm not saying this is everybody's case, but for a lot of people by this point they kind of stop caring what the society wants from them, because if people felt that they gave somebody else the authority over their life, usually by the time they retire they go, now I'm in charge. So
Oh,
it's interesting.
we forgot Mars retrograde. Can
Oh
you?
yeah, Mars retrograde. Yes, sorry about that. So Mars retrograde is when Mars is retrograde. This Mars wants to take an action on things that really like make sense. So it's not usually people with Mars retrograde are not people that going to be very impulsive. They really have to feel that this is the right thing for me. That
Oh
I
my
need to
God.
go. I need to go in the direction that is going to support my growth. And I don't know, for some reason I feel that Mars retrograde somehow to me is similar to Mars in Taurus. That I mean, it's not this stagnancy, like stuck in a comfort zone, but it's like I really have to think about this. It's not like I'm just not going to decide on the spur of a moment, but is this relevant to me? Is this going to support me on my path?
Yeah.
So yeah, so Mars in retrograde is definitely go after what Mars in retrograde feels is the right direction.
Yeah, my husband has it retrograde, and he's also Libra rising. It's when if I see a menu with 20 options, I know it will be some time for him to choose even what he's gonna eat. And I'm like, Arias, I'm like, come on, choose that. And sometimes I choose for him, but there is this always like, I'm impulsive and say, let's go do that. But he has Mars retrograde, and he's like, let's sleep on it, maybe a
Yeah.
week before we do it. I'm like, no, now. So I totally understand you. So they have to choose what is right, what is the right path of action for them. The
Yes.
spontaneity is kind of, yeah, they're very introspective about what action to take. So that can feel
It
like
has to.
stagnant somehow.
Yeah, it has to really resonate, because normally Mars likes to take an action. It likes to be fast. Like you are ruled by Mars because of your Aries sun. So it's like, okay, what do you need to think about? Let's just go. Let's just do it. But with the Mars retrograde, I really feel that it has to resonate with them, because with Aquarius, it's all about this resonance. Like there is something inside them that they cannot exactly identify with words, that either feels right or it doesn't.
Wonderful. Thank you. I really loved your description. It's a different perspective on retrograde planets. I absolutely love it. My family is my son is all retrograde planets except Mars. All retrograde except Mars. My daughter is all direct planets. So I see,
The difference.
absolutely. The retrograde person is more difficult and more intense, takes things more personally, more in depth, but more unique as well. Wow.
Yeah, it's a very
She's more
unique expression.
conformist. Yeah, she's more conformist, but her life is much easier, and her her interpretation of reality is like la 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 la, much easier as well.
Yeah, but your daughter is Pisces, isn't she Pisces?
Yeah, but still, she's
So it would help, like, oh yeah, let's not just get too attached to anything, because your son is Scorpio, if I remember correctly, so it's the fixed
Aries.
sign. It's like,
He's
he's
Aries.
Aries.
Yeah, but Scorpio's ascendant, Scorpio moon.
Scorpio. I knew there was some
Quite intense.
Scorpio in
Yeah.
there, and it's this like desire to attach to things, like hold on to them tightly. With Pisces, it's like it's mutable energy. It's like everything is gold. And I actually, like you mentioned something, and I wanted to just piggyback on that, because I think it's very important thing for people to maybe hear, and maybe it will validate their experience and what they're going through right now, is this multidimensionality. of actually who we are, because I'm coming across, you know, it's interesting how the clients that come to me usually is the similar theme, like in the same, and it's completely like random, you could say, but usually I have a bunch of clients that going through the same theme. And there's been a lot of theme like this, there's been this in regular frequency, the theme popping up where people are trying to give themselves a permission to truly be who they are, because we were being conditioned that, well, there is just should be just this one person, do just this one job, be just this, you know, like just exactly how you explained with your, for example, your truth, you know, your belief system preferences. You pick what resonates with you with all this from all these different religions, but not just being tied up to one thing, because you are a multidimensional being. And I think for a lot of people, that's something that maybe they struggle to accept, because they have this instinctual desire that I want to do all these different things. Just because I'm a lawyer doesn't mean I cannot be dancer. Or just because I'm a doctor, it doesn't mean that I cannot be whatever, astrologer, right? Because people think, how does these things go together? Well, because we
Yeah.
are multidimensional being, and I feel especially when Uranus will move into Gemini, because Uranus is about, individuation, acceleration. It's about breaking through the mold of what's outdated. And Gemini is all about these multiple options. And also when Pluto was for 5 minutes in Aquarius, it was making a trine to Gemini. So I feel all this fire energy, including like, you know, this because Gemini is the messenger. Mercury is the messenger that brings the messages from the other sides. And it's like we have more aspects to our divinity than is just this one name, just one thing. Because in evolutionary astrology, Gemini and Mercury is about how we identify the reality, gather information in order to connect, to identify reality for ourselves. And that's why I feel that right now, with everything that's going on, and also, you know, Mercury is going to go retrograde at the end of August, this will be again an opportunity for introspecting, like, you know, like who you are. And you have all these different aspects of yourself that you came here to nurture, not to just box yourself in one identity and that's it.
Wonderful. I really love your insights. Thank you so much, Mila. And
Thank
again, if
you.
anyone would like a personal reading with Mila, she's very busy, but she's taking now for the end of August.
Well, yeah, I still have few spaces, but I'm mostly now taking I have few spaces left for August, but September mostly. Yeah.
And her prices are very acceptable, and her insights are beautiful and profound. So put the link below in the description or in a card if anyone wants to connect with Mila. Thank you so much, Mila. And next time we're going to talk about evolutionary astrology, about skip steps.
Oh,
I'm
you
looking
wanted to use the
forward.
other planets when the other planets are square in the nose.
Yes, that would be beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank
Perfect.
you, everyone, for joining us as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lada.